स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं। प्लीज गो अहेड अंशु जी।
हरे हरिओम, आप सभी को मेरा नमस्कार। शाश्वत योग सभा से मैं अंशु गुप्ता आप सभी सम्मानित श्रोतागणों का हृदय से अभिवादन करती हूँ। हमारी इस शाश्वत सभा में चल रही परंपरा के अनुसार हम प्रत्येक वीरवार एक विशेषज्ञ को योगी विषय पर चर्चा और हमारे ज्ञान में वृद्धि के लिए आमंत्रित करते हैं। आज 16 सितंबर दिन गुरुवार संध्या 8 से 9 बजे गूगल मीट के द्वारा हम इस सत्र का आयोजन कर रहे हैं। इसी के अंतर्गत इस बार का विषय है योग के सिद्धांतों के माध्यम से समग्र कल्याण, होलिस्टिक वेलबींग थ्रू द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ योगा। और इस विषय पर हमारे साथ चर्चा के लिए होंगी सुश्री महक अग्रवाल जी। महक जी, शाश्वत योग सभा में आपका हृदय से स्वागत है। आप वर्तमान में तुलनात्मक धर्मों और सभ्यताओं के अध्ययन केंद्र के तहत पीएचडी कर रही हैं। हिंसा के संबंध में धार्मिक मिथक पर आपके शोध पत्र भी प्रकाशित हो चुके हैं और आप गांधी भवन की यौगिक छात्रा भी हैं। कार्यक्रम की अध्यक्षता करेंगे डॉक्टर इंद्र नारायण रमन सर। आप शाश्वत योग सभा के संस्थापक हैं। आप सहजता और सरलता से परिपूर्ण हैं और यौगिक विज्ञान के बहुत अच्छे ज्ञाता हैं। मैं आपका आज इस सत्र में स्वागत करती हूँ। परंपरा अनुसार सत्र का शुभारंभ भजन गायन से होगा और भजन की प्रस्तुति योगिनी अलका प्रभा जी के द्वारा रहेगी। आप एक कुशल गायिका हैं और गांधी भवन की पूर्व छात्रा भी हैं। आपका इस कार्यक्रम में स्वागत है और आपसे अनुरोध है कि भजन प्रस्तुति से आज का सत्र का शुभारंभ करें।
जी, आप सभी को मेरा धन्यवाद और नमस्कार। आशा करती हूँ कि आपको मेरा भजन पसंद आएगा। तो हम शुरू करते हैं। हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मन विजय करे। हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मन विजय करे। दूसरों से दूसरों से भूल हो तो
दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद को जय करें। कोई बात नहीं, कोई बात नहीं।
दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद की जय करें। ये माफ कीजिए जरा। हाँ, अब हम शुरू कर सकते हैं। हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मन विजय करे। दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद को जय करे। हमको मन की शक्ति देना, भेद भाव अपने दिल से साफ कर सके। भेद भाव अपने दिल से साफ कर सके। दोस्तों से भूल हो तो माफ कर सके। झूठ से बचे रहे, सच का दम भरे। झूठ से बचे रहे, सच का दम भरे। दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद को जय करे। हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मुश्किलें पड़े खुद को जय करें, हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मन विजय करें, दूसरों की जैसे पहले खुद को जय करें, हमको मन की शक्ति देना। धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
चाहती हूँ।
बोलिए नहीं नहीं कोई बात नहीं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद अलका प्रभा जी। भजन के सुंदर बोलों ने मन और मस्तिष्क को तो प्रभावित किया ही, साथ ही इसकी प्रस्तुति से शरीर का रोम रोम आनंदमय हो गया। धन्यवाद
आप
अलका
सभी
जी।
बहुत धन्यवाद मेरा भजन सुनने के लिए।
सत्र को आगे बढ़ाते हुए मैं महक जी से अनुरोध करूंगी कि अब आप इस सत्र को आगे ले चलें, हम अपने ज्ञान और अनुभव को हमारे साथ साझा करें और हमें और कुछ सीखने का मौका दें। महक जी।
Thank you for inviting me, ma'am. I would now present my slide here, and the medium of my communication would be English majorly and Hindi too. Can I do my slide? Is my slide visible?
Yes.
Okay. So the topic through the principles of first we understand what yoga is. That yoga is not an ancient myth buried in oblivion. It is the most valuable inheritance of the present. It is the essential need of today and the culture of tomorrow. By what it means is that yoga is not a myth that can be forgotten and that can be forgotten over ages, but over the ages yoga is continuing its presence and also its valuability, and it has maintained its value over the ages and over the centuries. As we all know that the philosophy of yoga is an ancient old philosophy, and which meets the need of today as well as the culture of tomorrow. As we see that the today's need in today's world, we are imbibed by stress, depression, and all sorts of physical and mental unhealth and unwell-being. So in this state, we can see that how yoga, in my presentation, I would like to present that how yoga is so valuable in dealing with all the stress, the mental as well as the physical unwell-being of our body, and how body and mind and soul and the holistic well-being of our being. And as well as the last point the Swami Satyanand Saraswati states in his presentation is that it also yoga is also very important for the culture of tomorrow. What he means by this is that for every generation to come and for every generation that has come and is yet to come, yoga presents some of the principles and some invaluable principles that can be imbibed by every generation. So it is never old and it is never redundant. It is always valuable and ever present. This is the introduction to yoga. So, as defined by Swami Satyanand Ji, yoga is the science of right living, and as such is intended to be incorporated in daily life. So, the elements of yoga work on all the levels of our being, which are physical level, mental level, vital level, emotional level, psychic level, as well as spiritual level. These are the 5 levels of our being, and we would also be discussing these levels of our physical as well as mental body in the next slides to come. So the yoga is basically a science of living. It is not only a right path, but a complete holistic, the whole harmonious well-being and the right living that is presented in a very scientific way. It is not something that is unscientific or something that is rhetorical, whether or not, but we'll see how yoga presents everything in a scientific way and helps us understand all aspects of our beings through the physical, mental well-being and emotional as well as spiritual well-being. So, firstly, we experience yoga on a very physical level because the first manifestation of our being, which reflects, is on a physical level, that which we start noticing that we are imbalanced, imbalance of the body, the imbalance of the mind, and how the bodily diseases, because of the culture, we know that how physical health is always given a priority or an importance over mental health, which is changing over time. But still, physical health, we the first signs of our well-being is practice is seen on a physical level. Yoga also deals with that, and it prescribes 8 Ashtanga Yoga, which we'll see in the next slides. So basically, yoga talks about the ascent of the consciousness, the spiritual awakening of the subtle centers of life, which we see that we have various chakras in our body. So to the enlightenment, Mr. I cannot turn off his mic.
म्यूट कर लीजिए.
Yeah. So, what I was talking about is that yoga is basically the spiritual awakening of the different centers of our being, which are the various chakras. And through that, when our consciousness ascends, then we experience a state of bliss, a state of enlightenment, that can be said. And this is a transformation through the gross matter or consciousness into the consciousness of the primordial principles. What does that means is that yoga is the transformation from sthula shari to sukshma shari. So how we see that there are 5 vibratory elements of our beings, which are manifested through the 5 senses and 5 organs of our being, which are tongue, which symbolizes taste, nose, which symbolizes smell, eyes, which symbolizes sight, ears, which symbolizes hearing, and our skin, which symbolizes touch. So all these elements are manifested on a physical level, but they symbolize something which is on a vibratory level. And all these vibratory elements have particular sense associated with them and particular organ through which we can experience the sense and feel the vibrations of the elements. And there are also 5 life forces, which are Prithvi, Jal, Akash, Vayu, and Agni. So these are the life forces: earth, water, fire, ether, and wind. So these life forces are manifested in the objective of yoga is to transcend our beings from the gross matter to the primordial principles. I hope this is clear. Now we'll see a quote by Paramahansa Yogananda Swamiji, who says that by the practice of yoga meditation, withdraw your mind, intelligence, life forces, and heart from the clutches of the ego, from the physical sensations of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, and from the objects of sense pleasures. For sake of all duties towards them, be a yogi by uniting yourself to my blessed presence in your soul. The ordinary man's mind is usually identified with external possessions and sense pleasures connected with the surface of the body. The yogi reverses the searchlights of intelligence, mind, and life forces inwards through the secret astral passage to reveal finally the soul's presence in the highest center, in the brain. He experiences in the Sahasrar the ineffable bliss of his soul. What he means by this is that all the elements that we talked about, the 5 senses of a being, which are manifested on an external level and an outward level, which is sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin, respectively. But all these sense pleasures have to be turned, we have to forsake them in the practice of yoga. And a yogi unites itself by being in the solitary presence of the soul and the mind, and how these external possessions and external sensory pleasures are connected with the surface of the body. They are only connected with the surface, they're only connected with a physical being, but not through our soul or our internal inner being. And how through the practice of yoga, yogi reverses these elements from external manifestation through inward manifestation. And how that is done is by achieving the consciousness, the higher levels of consciousness, and by attaining spiritual enlightenment through opening of all the chakras through the secret astral passage. And then by reaching the highest center of our being, which is in our brain, the highest chakra, and through that, if we awaken that chakra, then the soul of the yogi can attain eternal bliss finally. So now we'll talk about how yoga impacts us on a day-to-day level and how it can be achieved, how yoga works on different physical as well as mental well-beings. So stress, what is stress? We all experience stress on a day-to-day level. We say that we stress and then we de-stress on a day-to-day level. We feel burnt out and all of these things, and during these times of COVID, these things have only amplified. These things have exaggerated in number, and we see that there are like daily we see in the news and newspapers that how there are so many cases of stress, how there are so many cases of depression, suicide, and all those things which are connected to our modern lifestyle in a way. So how does yoga define stress? Stress can be defined in a multiple of ways, through physical stress, mental stress, psychological stress, and different disciplines of study define stress according to them. But let's see how yoga defines stress. So basically for yoga, stress is the imbalance. The imbalance of what? The imbalance of the three gunas that are present between inside us, which are sattva guna, rajas guna, and tamas guna. So these are the gunas, and the proper harmonious equilibrium of these gunas is very essential for maintaining and for living a harmonious holistic life. And when these gunas are imbalanced, when there is some imbalance due to some internal or external factors in these gunas, which leads to an imbalance in terms of yoga, and then it leads to stress. So according to yoga, stress is basically the imbalance of the elements that are present between us. And through this imbalance, when there is this imbalance, then imbalance leads to misery. So, as we have seen that almost every philosophical school in India as well as in Western philosophy or Indian philosophy, they basically focus on misery, like the basic principles of Buddhism. The Four Noble Truths talk about misery, how to cure misery, what is the path of misery, and how do we go on the path of misery. Similarly, the ancient schools of Sankhya and Yoga also revolve around misery as well as the curation of misery, and how can we get out of that misery, and how do we experience that misery, and how do we get out of that misery, because the basic life forces, the basic truths, the basic senses, and the basic sensations that we experience in our lives are surrounded by these. And through deep introspection and through deep interpretation and hermeneutics of things, our yogis, our rishis, and our the practitioners and the darshan shastris have reached to a stage where they define that how this misery and this imbalance which causes stress can be cured and can be reduced. So the Taittiriya Upanishad presents a holistic concept of human as having five major sheets of existence. So it very systematically presents it. So firstly, there is Annamaya Kosh, which is physical sheath. Sheath is basically the cover that is there for our body. It cannot be equated with sharir or body, but sheath is a different concept which equivalents to kosha, which is firstly the Annamaya Kosh and the physical sheath. As we saw that every stress is firstly the how do we identify stress is through the physical symptoms first, because we never focus so much on the mental health, which is which is the Manomaya Kosh, but the second kosh is Pranamaya Kosh, which is the vital sheath. Prana is, we'll also be talking about Prana in the later slides and how it is such a vital force for us because it is the thing that keeps us alive. And the next kosh is Manomaya Kosh, which is the astral sheath. Then Vijnanamaya Kosh, which is the wisdom sheath, and then Anandamaya Kosh, which is the bliss sheath. So the objective of the yogi is to attain a state of bliss, which is Sat Chit Anand, which is truth, Chit, and Anand. Anand is bliss. And then, so Anandamaya Kosh extends and exceeds all these koshes, and the basic aim of yoga is to maintain a balance and equilibrium in all the elements, in all the three gunas present between inside us, and cure the stress through the holistic well-being and through the systematic management of all the koshas in our lives. And now we'll move on to the basic principles of yoga and how yoga, what is the path of yoga. There the base for almost all the philosophical schools, the end goal of life and the end goal of all these darshans is to attain kaivalya, a state of enlightenment or a state of nirvana or moksha, whatever we can call it. So this state, the different schools define the state differently, and they also have different names for that. As such, your Buddhist school of thought terms it nirvana, whereas the Jain school of thought terms it moksha, and differently, and this Darshanic school of thought terms it Kaivalya. So the state of Kaivalya and yoga, different schools prescribe different paths to attain that state of Kaivalya. And the yoga school prescribes the path of Ashtanga Yoga to attain a state of Kaivalya. The first path is Yama, which is abstinences, which comprises of 5 Yama, then Niyama, observances, then Asanas, yoga postures. We'll be talking about asanas in detail because it is how our physical well-being can be maintained, and through all the different things, and pranayam, which is the breath control. We'll also be talking about pranayam a bit, and then pratyahara, which is the withdrawal of the senses, then dharana, concentration, dhyan, meditation, and then finally the stage of samadhi, which is the complete absorption of our being. So as we see that the first 5 stages, the yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, and pratyahar, are the external manifestations of our gross being. And we saw that we saw earlier that the aim of yoga is to turn our consciousness from the gross realities to the inner subtle primordial realities, which is manifested in the last 3, which is the dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. And pratyahar is the link between the external as well as the inner well-being, and how through abstinences, observances, yoga postures, and breath control, we can finally withdraw our senses, withdraw the 5 sensory organs and the vibrations of our senses from the external realities towards the inner reality, and reach a stage of introspection through concentration and meditation, and finally attain the blissful state of samadhi, which is the complete absorption of the being. And now let's talk about how we can deal with all these things on a practical level, on a day-to-day level, through asanas and through pranayams. We'll be focusing on that. So firstly, the asanas and how Hatha Pradipika defines asanas, and it says that everything. Asana is spoken of as the first part of Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga basically describes asana, and Hatha Yoga focuses on asana very predominantly. For Hatha Yoga, asana is the way to attain that state, and it focuses and it gives primordial importance to asanas. And having done asanas, one attains steadiness of body as well as mind. Asanas are not only associated with our body, with our physical beings, and with our physical organs and limbs, but they also work on a mental level and help us attain a state of steadiness of mind as well as body. and freedom from diseases and lightness of the limbs. As we see that we have been engrossed with multiple lifestyle diseases in today's world, and how stress and how we focus on the stress in the previous slide, that how stress can lead to imbalances of the body, and how that can lead to various mental as well as physical diseases on a different level. So asanas is a way that Hatha Yoga describes, that through the practice of asana, how we can attain freedom from diseases and steadiness of the body and mind. The Patanjali Yoga Sutra defines asana as Sthiram Sukham Asana, which is Sthiram means steadiness, Sukham means happiness, and Asana means asana. So basically, asanas are not the different yoga postures that we see in the popular culture these days, but asanas have a very simplicist concept in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, and it is very beautifully defined in this one sutra. And how it states in three terms, we can understand asana, which is a steadiness of our being, where we experience happiness and we sit down, we steady our body as well as our mind, and we experience a certain kind of happiness and a state of bliss. This is the main goal of asana, and this is how asanas need to be done, not by making our body and mind uncomfortable. The goal of asana is not to attain a flexible body or to enrich ourselves in strength. They can be a supplementary part to asanas. Of course, we reach a body, a state of flexibility, a state of strength, a state of harmony through asanas. But the basic goal of asanas, our basic goal and aim of practicing asanas should be this one sutra, which Patanjali Yoga Sutra defines, which is Thiram Sukham Asana. Now we'll see that how asanas are a state of being, how yoga is in itself a science of being, and asanas are a state of being, which is which is the steadiness, calmness, quietness, and comfortableness of physical as well as mental beings, on both manifested on a physical as well as a mental level. So the aim of asana, according to Patanjali Yoga Sutra, we'll see that Hatha Yoga differences in that. But according to Patanjali Yoga Sutra, the main aim of asana is to sit in one position for an extended period of time. So this part is very important, where it says extended period of time, because the length of time is very important. We'll see in pranayam also the length of time, the time that we hold our breath, the time that we intake our breath and we exhale our breath. The most importantly, the time of exhalation is so important that we have to extend that time. In asanas too, the time of sitting in one position has to be extended, and through that certain asana can be attained, and it can be perfectified in a way. And so Patanjali Yoga Sutra defines Raja Yoga, in which it defines asana as the sitting position, Sthiram Sukham Asana. But Hatha Yoga defines various different specific bodily positions of asana. And we see that nowadays in popular culture there are a lot of hatha yogis and the asanas prescribed by them in hatha yoga. But basically, through all these yoga postures, what we are trying to attain is to open up our energy channels and our psychic centers and our chakras, and reach a state of higher awareness. So all these asanas are basically a tool to reach higher awareness and higher consciousness, and the foundation of stable foundations of exploration of our own beings, introspection, and and internal inspection of our beings, and reaching that state of mental well-being where we are comfortable, where our mind is quiet and steady and calm, and we are not we experience certain things that we are sitting in an asana position, but our mind is somewhere. We are sitting in meditation, concentration, but our mind is on some other thing. Right now, we are sitting in this Shashwat Yoga Sabha, but we might be doing different things. We might be scrolling through our phones. We might be doing a lot of multiple things. That has to be avoided. That is that is the external distractions on an external level. And the basic theme, the basic aim of yoga, it's that state of being where we are present in our present, where we are here and now, and where we are steady, calm, and quiet. So uh, the state of beings that asana prescribes is not only bodily, but it also controls the breath, mind, and higher states of our consciousness and beyond. So practice in hatha yoga, as I previously also said, that practice of asanas is given primordial importance, and it is seen as foremost practice. And hatha yoga defines 8 lakh 40 84 lakh asanas, which corresponds to 84 lakh incarnations of every individuals, the 84 lakh cycles of births and rebirths that we take in different yonis, and that is what different asanas prescribe, and that is what they correspond to. But in common practice, as we see that there are only certain asanas which are basically the 84 asanas which are practiced on a day-to-day level by hatha yogis. And through this asana, the objective of hatha yoga is to attain liberation through this cycle of birth and rebirth and death, which is seen as the major, which is seen as the primary source of all the miseries of life. This continuous cycle of samsara, which we take birth, which we are reborn, and then we die, and then we are reborn again. So this cycle of continuous birth and rebirth, the aim of yoga is to escape this cycle of continuous birth and rebirth and attain a state of kaivalya. So simplistic forms of life through complex forms of life all are presented in asanas, and how being through simplistic forms of life transcends into higher forms of life and then attains his or her fully realized states, which is by bypassing the karmic processes and evolutionary stages of life. By practicing asanas and by practicing yoga, we can actually bypass various evolutionary stages of our life and escape this cycle of continuous reincarnations and rebirths and 84 lakh yonis of every individuals, and then we can attain kaivalya. So now we'll see that how basically introduction to asanas and how they are different ways and how they are connected with different aspects of our beings. So firstly, we'll see the most simplistic form, which is the animal form. So how asanas are corresponded to animal postures, and how asanas came to being in through named after different elements and how animals and how they reflect their movements. Because as we see that animals are more connected to the environment around us, they are more connected to the earth, they are more connected to the nature, and through their harmonious balance between their environment, which is the outside environment, and the inside environment of their beings, a certain kind of balance is maintained. And how this cycle of food cycle that has been there since ages, and how Charles Darwin also defines the evolutionary theory of the being. So these harmonious cycle and the objective of these asanas is to attain a harmony with our environment, both inside and outside. What is meant by inside environment is that the presence of inside elements in our body, which is the various fluids, the various secretory elements, the secretions of different kinds that we experience, the saliva that we produce, the sweat that we produce, and our various limbs which are there, like our hands, our legs, and the sensory organs of our beings, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and the skin, and all these elements which are present inside as well as outside, and also the external element, the external environment of our being, which is which is the ever presence of our of the external surroundings. There are multiple relationships that we have with our parents, parents, with our brother, with our sister, with our friends and stuff. So all these relationships which are external to us and the internal elements of our yoga prescribes the harmonious balance between all these so that we can lead a holistic life, a harmonious, balanced, equilibrium life. And so these are the various yoga postures with animal names. There are multiple others also. There is crocodile pose, turtle pose. These yoga asanas which are corresponding to animal postures, they reflect the various postures, the various movements of animals. And the similar thing is trying to be mimicked in the yoga pose so that we can attain different, we can take different good things from all the animals, and that we can imbibe in our bodies as well as minds. As we see that there is this cat pose and cow pose which is often done, which is Sukshmnari Kriya, and which is often done to relieve back pain. So this can be seen that how these asanas also work as to improve our digestion, to improve our gut health, to improve flexibility, to increase the strength of our limbs. And these are the various postures. Next, we'll move to more complex things, which is yogasana and prana. So prana, as we saw in Pranamaya Kosh, which is the vital sheath. So prana is the vital energy, and how yogasanas and pranas are connected, because yogasana not only works on a physical level, but it also manifests itself on a mental level, on a level of our mind as well as the body. So the combination, the harmonic combination of asana and pran is very essential to understand that how our whole being can harmoniously be conducted. So pran is, there are different types of breaths, which is the different types of pranas. And the the aim of pranayam is to experience yogic breathing and to take ourselves from our normal breathing to from through different stages and reach a stage where we can practice yogic breathing without any constraint or without any forceful purposeness of our beings, where we can where our breaths can flow in a way that it is we are practicing yogic breathing, but without any constraints, without any forceful exertion, without any force and trying to hold our breath or intake our breath, but that is happening in a very in an automatic equilibrium flow. And all these flow patterns flow through our nadis and maintain our cellular activities, as we know that our body is made of atoms, which are very small molecular atoms and cells. So these cells can rejuvenate and regenerate themselves through the vital force of pran. And through this force we can uh, the block pran creates accumulation of toxins in our body. And when prana shakti is released and when our vital energy flows in a very equilibrium, in a very stable, steady manner, then we can get our body rid of all these toxins and maintain a continuous cellular activity where our cells are continuously rejuvenating and regenerating themselves, which can also free ourselves from the physical as well as the mental tension, trauma, or the kind of stress that our body is in, whether it be physical stress or be mental stress. So on a psychological level or physiological level, both can be cured through the opening up of pranas, and through which we can get rid of our bodies through accumulation. So all these asanas, mudras, and pranayams work in a tandem together, and they form a complete harmonious trinity in themselves. And how these three elements, when practiced together, can lead us to a state of dhyan, and then to a state of samadhi, which is the ultimate goal. And next, let's talk about Kundalini, which is very important when we talk about yoga, because yoga talks about Kundalini and how to awaken Kundalini. So, ultimate purpose of yoga is to awaken Kundalini Shakti, which is the evolutionary energy of our beings. So, Kundalini is situated at the base of our being in the Muladhara chakra, and how through stimulation of our chakra by distributing energy all over our body, we can awaken the Kundalini, and through the central pathway of the spine, which is the Sushma Nadi, we can arise the Kundalini Shakti through the Sahasrara chakra, which is very difficult. It is not very easy, but we can, through this illumination, we can reach higher centers of human consciousness and higher centers of our being, where we can experience the complete harmonious well-being of our beings, and how the ultimate purpose of yoga is defined to be the awakening of Kundalini, and how so much stress is given on that, because through the awakening of all our chakras, through the blocking, through the removal of the blockage of all the pathways, which is the Sushumna Nadi, we can reach the highest state of our being, and we can experience the state of higher consciousness. Now the body mind connection, we'll see that how body and mind, in the end we'll see that how body and mind are all connected. They are not separate entities. We cannot separate mind from the body and experience things differently, but it is all integrated together in a very harmonious manner. And how body can be seen as the gross manifestation of the mind, which is the sthul sharir, and mind can be seen as the subtle form of the body, which is the sukshma sharir. So through mental, physical, psychological, and physiological levels of our being, through interconnectedness of them, we can attain a state of, as this beautiful picture here states, healthy body, healthy mind is equivalent to happy life. And these the title of our presentation, which is the holistic well-being through the principles of yoga, through different principles of yoga that we discuss in these slides. When we apply this, we can attain a healthy body, healthy mind, and through that, through the attaination of healthy body, healthy mind, we can attain a happy life. And these are finally the benefits of yoga and mindfulness, which is it improves brain function, lowers stress levels, increases flexibility, improves lung capacity, lowers blood pressure, reduces chronic pain, relieves anxiety, improves sense of balance, increases self-awareness, builds strong bones, calms the mind, and fosters resiliency. So all these, we can see that there are multiple, the benefits of yoga and mindfulness are not only limited, they are not exhaustive to this list, but they extend this list, and they are manifested on so many different levels of our being. On a day-to-day life, we'll see when we practice yoga, we practice mindfulness and meditation, we can see that how it helps in all our physical as well as mental beings, and how the lifestyle diseases like blood pressure, the reduced lung capacity due to corona, and reduced immunity can all be cured with the benefits, with the practice of right yoga and mindfulness. So through this, I end my presentation. Thank you so much. I hope you learned something. And I would open the stage for question answer round. Thank you.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद महक जी, आपने इतने विस्तार से हमें समझाया। निश्चित ही आज के सत्र से हमारे श्रोतागणों को लाभ मिलेगा और उनकी इस विषय के ज्ञान को एक नई विचारधारा मिलेगी। आज के इस विषय के संदर्भ में किसी श्रोतागण का कोई प्रश्न है तो वह महक जी से पूछ सकते हैं।
नमस्कार मैम, मैं चंद्रगुप्त भारतीय बोल रहा हूँ। मेरा कोई प्रश्न नहीं है, मैं बस ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि महक जी के द्वारा जो प्रेजेंटेशन दिया गया निश्चित रूप से बहुत ही सुंदर था, बहुत सारगर्भित था। और मैं क्योंकि दर्शन का छात्र रहा हूँ, दर्शन का स्टूडेंट रहा हूँ, इसलिए अभी भी हूँ, और इस वजह से मैं ये कह सकता हूँ कि इन्होंने जिस तरह से दर्शन को, योग को और आसनों को, जिस तरह से इन्होंने अष्टांग योग को दर्शन के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से भी बताया, और साथ के साथ उनका जो प्रैक्टिकल कर सकते हैं और किस तरह से हम उससे अपना लाइफ जो है, लाइफ में खुशियां ला सकते हैं। बहुत अच्छे तरीके से उन्होंने इनको प्रेजेंट किया, इसके लिए मैं महक जी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूँ। मेरा कोई प्रश्न नहीं है, बस मैं धन्यवाद देने के लिए मैं उपस्थित हुआ था यहाँ पे। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद महक जी।
महक जी, मैं राकेश बोल रहा हूँ। मेरी आवाज आ रही है आपको?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
मेरे दो छोटे छोटे क्वेश्चन है, क्योंकि आप पीएचडी कर रहे हो तो और आप बहुत